Picture this. Deep in the hills of southeastern Turkey, archaeologists are standing at the entrance of a massive stone vault that's been sealed for 12,000 years. Their hands are shaking, their hearts are racing, because what they're about to reveal could completely rewrite everything we thought we knew about human civilization. This isn't some dusty old tomb filled with pottery. This is something that challenges the very foundation of our history books. And when they finally broke that seal, what they found inside left the entire scientific community absolutely speechless. We're talking about Göbekli Tepe, a site so mind-blowing that when it was first discovered, archaeologists literally thought it was impossible. Because according to everything we've been taught, the people who built this place shouldn't have even existed yet, barely able to organize themselves into small groups. But the evidence inside this ancient vault tells a completely different story. A story about advanced knowledge, sophisticated societies, and capabilities that make us question everything we think we know about our ancestors. The site was actually first noticed back in the 1960s, but here's where it gets interesting. The local farmers who owned the land knew there was something there. They kept finding these strange stones whenever they tried to plow their fields, but everyone just assumed it was an old medieval cemetery. Nothing special, nothing worth investigating. So for decades, one of the most important archaeological sites in human history was literally being used as farmland. People were growing crops on top of a discovery that would eventually turn archaeology upside down. Then in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt arrived. And unlike everyone else, Schmidt took one look at those stones and immediately knew something was off. These weren't ordinary rocks. The shape, the size, the way they were positioned. His gut told him this was something ancient, something significant. So he started digging, and what he uncovered in those first few weeks made him realize he'd stumbled onto something that would define his entire career. The first structures they unearthed were these massive T-shaped pillars. And when I say massive, I mean truly enormous. Some of these stone pillars weigh up to 20 tons. That's about the weight of 3 or 4 full-grown elephants. Standing upright. Carved from solid bedrock. Transported somehow from quarries that were hundreds of meters away. And here's the kicker. These weren't just roughly shaped stones. They were covered in intricate carvings, detailed reliefs of animals, foxes, lions, bulls, scorpions, vultures, snakes, all carved with a level of artistic skill that honestly shouldn't exist for this time period. But the real shock came when they dated the site, because the numbers that came back didn't make any sense. The oldest structures at Göbekli Tepe were built around 9600 BCE. That's nearly 12,000 years ago. To put that in perspective, this site was already ancient when the pyramids of Egypt were being built. It predates Stonehenge by about 6,000 years. It's older than writing, hunting, and gathering, with no concept of architecture or organized religion or complex society. And that's what makes this discovery so earth-shattering. Because Göbekli Tepe isn't some simple shelter or basic dwelling. It's a massive complex of ceremonial structures. Organization and sheer manpower required to build something like this suggests a society far more advanced than anything we thought existed at that time. We're talking about hundreds, possibly thousands of people working together with a common purpose. They had to quarry these massive stones, carve them with precision tools, transport them across difficult terrain, and then erect them in specific circular arrangements. This requires leadership, organization, specialized roles, and probably some form of social hierarchy. The implications are staggering. For over a century, archaeologists have taught that civilization began with agriculture, which led to permanent settlements, which eventually led to cities, specialization of labor, organized religion, and all the trappings of civilization. It was a neat, linear progression that made logical sense. Agriculture came first, and everything else followed. Because this site was built before agriculture, the people who constructed these monuments were still hunter-gatherers. They hadn't domesticated plants or animals yet, but somehow they organized themselves well enough to create something that rivals the great monuments of later civilizations. This suggests that maybe, just maybe, we've had it backwards all along. Maybe organized religion and the desire to create ceremonial centers actually came first, and maybe agriculture developed as a result, as a way to support the large gatherings of people who came together for these religious purposes. Think about what that means for a second. Everything we've built our understanding of human development on might be completely wrong. The textbooks might need to be rewritten. The timeline of civilization might need to be pushed back by thousands of years. And the capabilities of our ancient ancestors might be far greater than we ever imagined. As excavations continued, the site just kept getting more impressive. They've identified at least 20 stone circles so far, and ground-penetrating radar suggests there might be hundreds more still buried underground. Each circle follows a similar pattern: massive T-shaped pillars arranged in a ring, with two even larger pillars standing in the center. The precision is remarkable. These weren't randomly placed. There's clear evidence of architectural planning and astronomical alignment. Some researchers have noticed that certain structures align with celestial events. The positioning of specific pillars seems to correspond with the rising and setting of certain stars during that time period. This suggests that the builders had knowledge of astronomy. They were tracking the movements of celestial bodies and incorporating that knowledge into their architecture. Again, this is supposed to be impossible for people of this era. We're talking about hunter-gatherers who allegedly had no concept of science or systematic observation. Yet here they were, building structures that captured and reflected their understanding of the cosmos. The animal carvings are another fascinating aspect. These aren't crude stick figures or simple outlines. They're detailed, naturalistic representations that show a deep familiarity with animal anatomy and behavior. The artists captured the essence of each creature with remarkable skill, and it's not random. The specific animals chosen and the way they're arranged seems deliberate, almost symbolic. Many researchers believe these carvings represent a complex mythology or cosmology. Perhaps they're telling stories, recording important events, or representing spiritual beliefs about humanity's relationship with nature. One particularly intriguing carving has sparked intense debate. There's a scene that some researchers interpret as a representation of a cosmic catastrophe. It shows what appears to be a swarm of objects raining down from the sky, alongside various animals in distress. Some scientists have proposed that this might be a record of a comet impact or airburst event that occurred around this time. Interestingly, there's geological evidence for a significant climate event called the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis, which occurred roughly 12,800 years ago. This was a period of rapid cooling that dramatically affected human populations across the globe. Could the builders of Göbekli Tepe have been recording a catastrophic event they witnessed? Were they survivors of something that wiped out other civilizations? This is where things get really speculative, but it's worth considering. If there were more advanced societies before this cataclysmic event, and Göbekli Tepe represents the attempts of survivors to preserve their knowledge and rebuild, that would explain some of the site's mysterious sophistication. It would also suggest that human history is far more complex and cyclical than we've imagined, with rises and falls of civilization extending much further back than our current models allow. The construction techniques are another mystery. How did people without metal tools, without wheels, without draft animals, manage to move 20-ton stones? The quarry sites have been identified, and they show evidence of sophisticated stoneworking techniques. The builders used stone tools to carve channels around the pillars while they were still part of the bedrock. Some of these pillars were never finished. They're still partially attached to the bedrock, which gives us a glimpse into the construction process. But it doesn't answer the fundamental question of how they moved the completed ones. Experimental archaeology has attempted to recreate these techniques. Teams have tried using wooden rollers, rope, and human muscle power to move similarly sized stones. And while it's possible, it requires enormous numbers of people working in coordination. We're talking about potentially hundreds of people to move a single pillar. This brings us back to the question of social organization. How did a hunter-gatherer society coordinate that many people? What motivated them to contribute such enormous effort to this project? The traditional view of hunter-gatherers is that they lived in small, egalitarian bands, rarely numbering more than a few dozen individuals. But Göbekli Tepe suggests gatherings of hundreds, possibly thousands. To support that many people in one location, even temporarily, requires significant resources. They were slaughtering huge numbers of wild game, suggesting organized hunts that brought in enough meat to feed enormous crowds. This paints a picture of seasonal gatherings. Perhaps different groups from across the region would converge on Göbekli Tepe at specific times of the year, guided by celestial events that they tracked through the monument's alignments. They would come together for ceremonies, for feasting, for the communal effort of building and maintaining these structures. These gatherings would serve multiple purposes, reinforcing social bonds, facilitating trade and the exchange of information, arranging marriages between groups, and celebrating shared spiritual beliefs. And here's where it gets even more interesting. After all that effort, after building these incredible structures that should have lasted forever, the builders deliberately buried them. That's right. They carefully filled in the entire complex with debris and soil, creating the artificial hill that exists today. Why would they do this? Why invest so much effort into creating something magnificent, only to bury it? Various theories have been proposed. Maybe the religious significance of the site changed. Maybe whatever catastrophe they were commemorating or trying to prevent came to pass, and the site was no longer needed. Maybe a new generation with different beliefs wanted to literally bury the old ways. Or maybe the act of burial itself was part of the ritual significance. In some belief systems, burial isn't about ending something but about transforming it, preserving it for eternity, or sending it to the spiritual realm. Whatever the reason, this intentional burial is why the site survived in such remarkable condition. While other ancient structures crumbled and eroded over millennia, Göbekli Tepe was protected under tons of earth. It sat there, waiting, preserving its secrets for 12,000 years until modern archaeologists finally uncovered it. The discovery has sent shockwaves through multiple academic fields. Archaeologists are having to reconsider their models of human development. Anthropologists are rethinking what hunter-gatherer societies were capable of. Historians are questioning where civilization really begins. And the implications extend even further. If complex societies existed this far back, what else are we missing? How much of human history has been lost to time, catastrophe, or our own failure to recognize what we're looking at? Some researchers have begun looking at other sites with fresh eyes. Structures that were previously dismissed as natural formations or given later dates are being reevaluated. In Turkey alone, several other sites with similar T-shaped pillars have been identified, suggesting that Göbekli Tepe wasn't unique, but part of a broader cultural phenomenon. This raises the possibility of an entire civilization that we're only beginning to understand. The site also challenges our assumptions about religion and spirituality. Göbekli Tepe is clearly a ceremonial center, built for ritual purposes. But it predates all known organized religions. So what were they worshipping? What beliefs motivated them to create something so monumental? The animal imagery suggests a deep spiritual connection with nature, but the specifics remain mysterious. Were these totems, deities, symbolic representations of spiritual forces? We may never know for certain, but the sophistication of the iconography suggests a complex belief system with layers of meaning. Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist who brought Göbekli Tepe to the world's attention, spent the rest of his life working at the site. Tragically, he passed away in 2014, but his legacy lives on. The excavations continue under new leadership, and every season brings new discoveries. Each new pillar uncovered, each new carving revealed, adds another piece to the puzzle. Current estimates suggest that less than 5% of the site has been excavated. Think about that. Everything we've learned so far, all the revolutionary discoveries, all the paradigm-shifting revelations come from just a tiny fraction of what's there. Hundreds of structures still lie buried underground, waiting to be revealed. Who knows what other secrets they hold? What other aspects of our history might be rewritten when they're finally uncovered? The Turkish government has recognized the site's immense significance and has invested in protecting and preserving it. A massive roof structure has been built over the main excavation areas to shield them from weather and erosion. There are plans to develop the area as a major archaeological park and museum, making it accessible to the public while preserving its integrity for future generations. Göbekli Tepe has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, ensuring international support for its preservation. But with fame comes challenges. The site has become a magnet for pseudo-scientific theories and wild speculation. Some claim it's evidence of ancient aliens, lost Atlantis, or other fringe ideas. While these theories make for entertaining television, they distract from the real significance of the discovery. The truth about Göbekli Tepe is far more fascinating than any science fiction. It tells us that our ancestors were capable of remarkable things, not because they had help from extraterrestrials, but because human ingenuity, creativity and organizational ability emerged much earlier than we thought. The real lesson of Göbekli Tepe is humility. It reminds us that our understanding of history is incomplete and constantly evolving. It shows us that ancient peoples were not primitive or simple, but rather sophisticated, capable, and driven by the same fundamental human needs that drive us today. The need to understand our place in the cosmos, to create meaning, to build something that outlasts our brief lives, to gather in community, and celebrate our shared humanity. As research continues, new technologies are being brought to bear. Advanced imaging techniques, chemical analysis of residues, DNA studies of human and animal remains, and computer modeling of the structures are all providing new insights. Each technological advancement opens new windows into the past, allowing us to ask and answer questions that previous generations of archaeologists couldn't even imagine. The impact of Göbekli Tepe extends beyond academia. It's changing how we see ourselves as a species. It's pushing back the boundaries of what we thought was possible. It's showing us that civilization in some form has deeper roots than we imagined. And perhaps most importantly, it's reminding us that there's still so much to discover, still so many mysteries waiting to be solved. So when scientists unsealed that 12,000-year-old vault in Turkey and revealed what was inside, they didn't just find some interesting ruins. They found evidence that forces us to reconsider the entire story of human civilization. They found proof that our ancestors were building monumental structures, creating sophisticated art, organizing complex societies, and contemplating the cosmos thousands of years before we thought it was possible. They found a game changer, a history rewriter, a reminder that the past is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. And with 95% of the sites still unexcavated, the most amazing discoveries might still be waiting beneath the surface, ready to change history all over again.